Full summary of this thread. We began with Bob Irwin's autobiography, The Last Crocodile Hunter, and a clear brief. Examine it from a sovereign Kabi research perspective, with the knowledge that Australia Zoo sits on unceded country. Biological father Bob gives his biological father only a few flat sentences. The man died in a Japanese POW camp in Burma when Bob was 4, leaving his mother to raise 2 boys. No name is given, no unit, no further curiosity. We traced the strongest match. Private Joseph Ronald Irwin, VX 20192, two-towner Baki Battalion, who died of cardiac beriberi on 18 November 1943 at 131 Kilo Camp, Little Nika area on the Thailand-Burma Railway. He is buried in Thanbuseat War Cemetery. The book shows no interest in this history and carries a quiet tone of grievance that the father left them. By contrast, stepfather Les is heavily idealized as the true father figure, the gentle giant and model of hard work. Prologue, the buried alive story. Bob claims that at age 30, while digging a 14-foot shaft by hand, the entire excavation collapsed on him in compacted clay. He survived with only 2 tiny air pockets long enough for his father-in-law to drive to trade school, collect an apprentice, return, and dig him out by hand. He was dragged to the surface lifeless, refused hospital, and lay muddy on the kitchen floor where the life-changing conversation with Lynn occurred. We tested the claim against trench collapse physics, soil weights, wet clay roughly 2,700 to 3,000 pounds per cubic yard, documented survival cases, and leverage. Full burial at that depth with only tiny air pockets, followed by a multi-step delayed civilian rescue, sits outside normal physical reality and recorded outcomes. Most fatalities occur in trenches under 10 feet. Survivable cases with air pockets almost always involve partial burial and rapid professional response. Soil liqueficanter, if present, would make usable air pockets even less likely. The story functions as a dramatic conversion device rather than a reliable account. Kitchen floor scene. After the rescue, Bob lies on the kitchen floor, still covered in mud. Lynn comes home. He declares he cannot continue the work, and she immediately agrees to start the reptile park. The scene is the true climax of the prologue. It converts near death into clean decision, gives Lynn the role of instant blessing, and turns an ordinary domestic threshold into the birthplace of the later legend. Symbolically, it performs a settler rebirth. The man rises from the earth, marked by mud, and is released into the new life that leads on to Kabi country. Melbourne career and supporting claims. Bob describes a packed schedule, full-time plumbing and later rock blasting, competitive badminton claimed as Victorian state champion, and extra work digging graves by hand. The badminton title leaves no trace in Victorian championship records. Local oral history adds that his first plan in Birwa was a badminton center that was laughed at, and that he worked for a time as a station manager and was remembered unfavorably. The book erases these complications. Grave digging is presented as pure toughness and self-challenge. We briefly examined the darker historical record of the occupation, body snatching, theft from the dead, etc., and the 1832 Anatomy Act that largely ended the resurrectionist trade by legalizing the use of unclaimed poor bodies. Bob's own account of the work is brief and self-mythologizing. In the final Melbourne years, he moved into rock blasting for higher pay. He records the death of a friend who detonated explosives too early. This, along with repeated minor accidents and the buried alive incident, is used to justify leaving the trade. Childhood discipline and the 4-year-old incident. Bob records that his mother disciplined him and his brother with wooden coat hangers and, when those broke, wire ones. He normalizes it completely. It never did us any harm. The most detailed childhood parenting episode involving Steve occurs when Steve is 4. Bob claims he found the boy holding 2 large eastern brown snakes, one in each hand by the tail, on a rocky hillside at Sunbury. Bob backhanded him hard enough that the child rolled down the hill. Steve did not cry. The incident was kept secret from Lynn. The snake details are physically impossible. A 4-year-old's arm span and strength cannot control 2 snakes longer than the child is tall, held simultaneously by the tail as live moving loads. Leverage mechanics make the scene unworkable. The blow itself is recorded as heavy. The episode installs young Steve as already exceptional and fearless, while showing Bob as the decisive, physical father. It functions as myth-building for the future crocodile hunter narrative. Reptile Park Origin. The book constructs the move to Birwa as a clean moral and emotional necessity. Danger of the work, near-death experience, Lynn's instant blessing, existing passion for reptiles, cold climate, and financial stability. In November 1972, they find the 3.5-acre highway block and buy it. Complications, failed first plans, and the fact of unceded Kabi country are absent. Overall pattern, across the sections examined, the book repeatedly heightens, simplifies, or constructs key moments to serve a single origin myth. The hard, practical, near-death tested man who earns the right to abandon the ordinary path and begin again on the land that becomes Australia's zoo. Specific claims, state badminton title, 14-foot survival with tiny air pockets, the precise Sunbury snake episode, fail basic external checks, emotional treatments, biological father, physical discipline, the kitchen floor conversion are shaped to remove friction and install destiny. The sovereign reading holds both the published story and the gaps, impossibilities, and erasures that sit beneath it. That is the full ground covered in this thread. Stop Barumba Hydro,
Bob
linkturn.ee/gil'burri.
Irwin's origin myth is treated like conservation gospel, but put it under sovereign scrutiny and the timeline collapses. He claims to be a state badminton champion. There are 0 public records. He claims he was buried alive in a 14-foot clay trench, surviving on tiny air pockets while 2 men dug him out by hand. Physically impossible. And 4-year-old Steve catching 2 massive brown snakes? A toddler physically cannot leverage that live weight. Why fabricate these stories? To build a clean, destined conversion myth, a near-death experience, a dramatic kitchen floor epiphany, and his wife's instant blessing to move north. Then the land at Birwa is simply found, a blank canvas for the crocodile hunter to build his dream. But that land is unceded Kabi country, and the book never once names the traditional owners. This origin myth does exactly what it was engineered to do. It erases the violent complications of colonialism and turns the occupation of indigenous land into environmental destiny. The fire stays lit. Stop Barumba Hydro.
Brother, we go straight into the prologue.